Let's talk really quick about writing lines for the clarinet. First thing to know is that clarinetists can play really long phrases. That was about as long as I could play on a medium-sized breath, to give you an idea. Also, you should know that circular breathing isn't very hard on clarinet. Very few clarinetists actually bother to learn it because we can play such long phrases. But if you happen to know someone who can circular breathe, it's not uncommon and it's very possible. Also, writing really big intervals on the clarinet is pretty easy to accomplish. And you can write them pretty fast, actually. The clarinetist might have to wrap their brain around it, but it's not that hard to actually perform. Also, you should know that it's easier to slur up than it is to slur down. A lot of times what clarinetists will do, and we'll never even tell you, is that we're going to tongue really softly that lower note if we have to slur down. You'll never know, so everyone wins. The other thing to know about clarinet, and all woodwinds really, is that every single note has its own distinct timbre. Now, I don't have time to get into the timbre of every single note and show you how they all sound, but you should know that any professional clarinetist probably has perfect pitch for clarinet because we recognize the timbre of each note. The general rules on how to guess timbre if you don't have the time to learn every single note on this instrument is that more of the tube that's being played is going to be darker and warmer, and less of the tube is going to be higher and thinner. So, low E, which is our lowest note, as you can see, all the tube, so the air goes all the way out the tube. Big, fat, round, warm. Very easy to get it that way. B flat is the worst note on the clarinet, and it's played with this guy and this guy, which means that the air really starts coming out of the clarinet there. It's not going through this whole body, so it's thin. Which is also why if you go from B flat to B, you're going from this to playing everything. Suddenly it's way bigger. So this concept really works for the chalumeau and the clarion registers. Once you get to altissimo, it's all overtones and it doesn't really count as much. But essentially know that it starts over. So the bottom of the chalumeau is going to be warmer, the top of the chalumeau is going to be thinner, the bottom of the clarion is going to be warmer, the top of the clarion is going to be thinner. So also, the reason that the clarinet has all this metal on it is so it can play chromatic notes. If you look at some of those flutes behind me, see how they don't have any metal in them? Those guys can only really play major scales. All this is so you can play chromatically, but what you're doing is you're venting various side things, and what happens is that it makes the timbre just a little bit thinner. So those notes are G sharp, C sharp, and D sharp in the chalumeau, and then D sharp, G sharp, and A sharp in the clarion. Don't be afraid to write those notes though, they still sound good. We're just being very specific about the timbre. Know that any professional clarinetist, all they do is practice to make this all sound as consistent as possible. All the things I just told you are tendencies that clarinetists try to eliminate to make it sound beautiful and consistent and perfect. So you might have trouble actually hearing these, but it's good to know in your writing because you'll write better clarinet parts if you write for the instrument, not just the professional player who has mastered the instrument. So one limit of the clarinet is this key right here. It's G sharp in the chalumeau and D sharp in the clarion. So E, F, and F sharp in the chalumeau, and then B, C, and C sharp in the clarion can be played on either side of the clarinet, but this G sharp, D sharp only can be played on the right hand. There are about like maybe 10, more like 5% of clarinetists do have an extra key edit here. So if you meet one of those guys, that's great. But for a lot of us, what that means is that there are certain passages that become a little bit impossible. So if you wrote just something that seems simple, B, C sharp, D sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, it's really hard to play, especially fast, because what I have to do is I have to cheat. Maybe you can hear the clicking of the keys. And here it's not perfect when I'm getting back to B because I'm doing that. So the trick to avoiding that is you can't write the G sharp, D sharp key and then 2 of the other notes and then the G sharp, D sharp key again. That's what'll mess us up. So if you want to be really thorough and write a part that's very playable, do it. But also know that clarinetists, we see that a lot, and we're pretty good at faking it. So if you're writing for 2 clarinets and you want them to blend really well, what you should do is you should write them either both in the chalumeau or both in the clarion. If you write them both in the same register, they'll blend a lot nicer than if you write them in different registers. They still blend, but it's not the same. Finally, let's move on to the part you've been waiting for this whole time. I think you've earned it. Special effects. Now the trick here, more than any other thing that we've discussed, is know your player. There's so many players who know various special effects, so ask. If you don't know your player and you don't have the ability to ask the person you're writing for, it's safer to not write many special effects. So first, let's get the common ones out of the way. Scooping. You should also know it's very hard to raise the pitch on clarinet. It's very easy to lower the pitch. So it's about as much room as I have going up, but going down, and the higher you are, the easier it is to scoop more. Which leads me to everyone's favorite technique, the Rhapsody in blue clarinet solo thing, which really is just a portamento. It's really best done from D up to something. If you go lower, most clarinet players will probably gliss, like. Wherever you want to go with that. It is possible to do the portamento in the chalumeau, but it's not as effective. And again, we run into that problem where the break, where I can pull my fingers off here, and this, which is the top before you get to the break, is F, and then you have to play the break where you don't have those open holes that you can play with. So if you wanted a portamento all the way up the range of the clarinet, you kind of have to fake it somehow. If that was convincing for you, feel free to write that if you know a clarinet player who can do it. If it wasn't convincing, now you know how to write for it. Growling. It's a little less common on clarinet, but it works for some jazz, klezmer kind of things. I really like it actually in the chalumeau. Flutter tongue on clarinet. Don't write it. It's possible, but you have to do weird things with your mouth. Very few people can do it, and you probably just want a growly sound. It sounds like this. So it's possible you have to take the clarinet kind of out of your mouth so it won't get in the way of your tongue. It's harder to do so you want rests around it, so you're not interfering with something else. It's something to be aware of. Some clarinetists can do it, but again, it's one of those things, maybe don't write that. This is something that I kind of might have made up. It sounds like this. I'd probably just write slashes and say, go crazy or something like that. But what I'm essentially doing is I'm like just wiggling my fingers and scooping and getting the clarinet in a place where it's not really hitting any of the notes. It's an effect you might be interested in. You could also tell your clarinetist to bite their reed and it'll get just really crazy high notes that are kind of uncontrollable. Your clarinetist might not want to bite their reed because it might mess it up a little bit, but if you want crazy, horrible high notes, if you want it. It's there. So you can take apart the clarinet and play various sections of it for various effects. If you're writing something really modern, you could go ahead and take off the bell, which won't have much of a difference. Pretty much the same thing, but if you take off, another part, it still sounds like a clarinet. But then you can start having some fun if you're just playing the top section of the clarinet. Just the mouthpiece is a little more flexible than with the barrel, as this is called. A million things you can do with that. You can also do the opposite and play the whole clarinet without the mouthpiece and buzz into it. I'm not a very good trumpet player, so I can't get a lot of pitches. But if you want weird sounds, there are weird sounds that the clarinet can make. There's also a klezmer kind of laugh that the clarinet sounds great doing. That laughing effect is not super common, and it's best played up there at the top of the clarion to the altissimo, and it's best done chromatically. The way I played it is probably the most effective way to get the laughing sound. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions about writing for the clarinet, feel free to contact me. And if you're a composer and you want to write for all these crazy techniques and things, and you're having trouble finding someone, here's the part where I shamelessly plug that I live in New York City, and I have a bit of a home studio where I do professional studio work. Check out my setup and more on my website. I've got some videos and samples and various other things, and the link below is all my contact information and stuff. Check that out, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.